Rev up your engines!
Jeremy says, why do you hate Hyundai? Hate is such a strong word. I would say strongly dislike, because I don't like things that don't hold up over time. I cannot stand buying things and they break. It makes me furious. If I buy something and a year or two later it's broken, I'm mad as a hornet. And those cars just don't hold up over time. Engines blow up. Transmissions go out. They just don't hold up. I want value for my money. I mean, if you're not as cheap as me, say you go out and buy a brand new Hyundai, maybe it'll be relatively trouble-free for 100,000 miles, right? Well, I'm the guy who buys the car at 100,000 miles and then drives it for 2 or 3 or 400,000 more, right? There's no way I'd buy one of those cars at that mileage. I know how they last. But a Toyota or a Honda, I'll buy one that's got 100, 150, even 220,000 if the price is right, because I know how well made they are. And that's why I don't like them. Jeremy X says, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying a Kia Stinger as my daily driver. I really want a sports sedan. They're cool looking, they're zippy. But then again, they're Kias. They're better than they used to be, but they're still nowhere near Toyota and Honda. A customer the other day brought me a Kia, had 65,000 miles, the engine just blew it up, and they had put another engine in the car. This is unthought of. I see Toyotas with 800,000 miles, some of them 500,000 miles, and they still have the original engines. I'm not a fan. Now, if you want a sporty little car, you can get one cheap enough. You want to drive it for a while, less than 100,000 miles for sure. Maybe you'll have some fun with it, but they do not last over time. They just don't. Albert says, Scotty, what do you think about a 2018 Audi A6 3.0 supercharged engine? I've been driving it for almost 25,000 miles and no issues. Well, I should hope so. That's only 25,000 miles. The problem with Audis are they have this level of technology that's higher and higher and higher. I mean, Volkswagen owns them. They also own Porsche. They put all the high technology into those cars, and they are fun to drive, and they're fast. But man, when they get old and get mileage on them, they are endless. Money pits. If that supercharger breaks and wears the engine out faster, which it will, you see what it costs to rebuild one of those engines. Even a rebuilt supercharger is going to cost you a small fortune. They are cars that you buy and drive, and long before they have 100,000 miles, you generally get rid of them because they turn into endless money pits. Now, they are fun. I had a guy bring one to me in Rhode Island, but it was because he paid 1/3 of the price of a brand new one, and his high school buddy was an Audi mechanic who worked on it for half price. So he only charged them $50 an hour to work on it, which is actually less than half price. Some of the Audi dealers are pushing $200 an hour labor. So he got a deal and his friend wasn't ripping him off. But anybody else, you got to be insane to buy one of those over time. If you want to get one, lease it. When it leases up, be happy. Brian Cassatt says, Scotty, how reliable are the 3.5 V6s in the Nissan Murano compared to the V6s of Toyotas and Hondas? Not even close. I would not buy a Nissan. Those Muranos, oh man, they just fall apart when they get older. I had a customer once called me to look at their car there in a parking lot. They were just coming backing up from lunch and getting ready to go out in the street, and the front axle just fell off the car and only had 70,000 miles on them. They're not very well made in the whole vehicle. The engines aren't horrendous, those V6s. They're not horrible engines, but they're not going to last like a Toyota and Honda V6 engine will by any stretch of the imagination. The main people buy used Muranos is because they got such a bad reputation. You get used ones cheap. You're going to pay 2 to 3 to 4 times as much for a Toyota SUV as you will for a used Murano. That's just how it goes. MG Remote Start said, Scotty, 2000 Buick LeSabre, air's coming from the oil dipstick. What do you think? One of two things. Everything is sealed these days for pollution reasons. The engine system is pressurized, right? So if you're talking about you pull the dipstick out and you put your hand there and you get oil pressure, all cars do that to some extent these days. They're actually designed that way. But if you're talking about it blows the dipstick up a little and it comes flying out, that generally means that your piston rings are worn out. The piston rings are supposed to seal the pistons when they go up and down. So when the gasoline explodes and they get pushed down, all that explosive power doesn't go around the piston rings and then blow into the bottom of the engine, then come out the crankcase where the oil dipstick is. If you're talking about it comes out in droves, your engine's worn out. You're going to need a piston ring job eventually. It's just pushing too much pressure through. JSR Day says, will AT205 rejuvenate my marriage as well? Well, I guess it depends who you're married to. You know, if you're married to one of those blow-up dolls, well, it works on rubber products to rejuvenate them. So in that case, yes, it probably would work. It's not made for human consumption. I mean, it is amazing stuff. It rejuvenates rubber. I put it on seals, windows. Guys put it on their golf club handles so that they last longer. All kinds of rubber or plastic joints. If they're creaking, you spray it on. You let it soak overnight. It makes it more supple and the creaking can stop. It's amazing stuff. I've been using it for like 3 decades, over 3 decades now. Somebody told me it's hard to get now because they have some kind of production problem because of coronavirus. It's a company in Chicago, automatic transmission products. Maybe you'll ask them. Tell them Scotty says make some more because people want it. It's a great product. I wouldn't use it on humans, though. Nicholas Clondo says, I got a 2018 Mazda 3 automatic with 43,000 miles. When should I change the transmission fluid and the engine coolant? I would change the fluid now, and I change it every 40, 50,000 miles. You can drain it, fill it yourself. I've got videos how to do that. Now, the coolant, generally coolant, modern coolant, is good for a minimum of 100,000 miles or 7 years. So I wouldn't even mess with that for a while. It used to be you had to change coolant every 3 years, that old green coolant, but now they're using different ones. They're called OAT, which stands for Organic Acid Technology. Some of the really good ones, like the Toyota, some of them can last 10 years, 175,000 miles, and yours has OAT coolant. That's what it comes with, the Organic Acid Technology. It lasts longer. You don't have to change it so often. Matthew Black, he said, I just bought Accent 2001, and it dies at red lights. Any idea why? You always have to check the obvious. Maybe your air filter's clogged. Check it. Put a new one in if it's dirty. Maybe your fuel filter's clogged. Change that. Change the spark plugs. Everything that's obvious. You start there. But then it can be you either have a vacuum leak, a vacuum line came off, and when it's idling, you'll hear a little sucking sound. Find where the hose came off, where it's sucking. Or you could have a sticking throttle. Now, I've got a video, Make Your Car Run Better with a Little Spray Cleaner. And that shows how you can get throttle spray cleaner, clean your throttle. It takes about 15 minutes on most cars. And then a lot of times the stalling's gone. So try all those. Work from the simple to the complex. Randy Ramirez says, in August 2020, I got a die-hard battery for my Honda. I got it tested Tuesday and it's already bad. Fortunately, it's under warranty, so I don't get any co-payment. I paid nothing, got a new one. Are die-hard batteries that bad? Yes, they can be. Now, back in the day, we're talking about the early 1970s, when I was a young mechanic. Die-hards are sold by Sears, and they actually gave a lifetime guarantee. They were pretty good batteries, but the problem was people were buying them for their car, and back in those days, most cars had a pretty similar sized battery. They'd get rid of one car and get another. They'd put the die-hard in it, and they'd keep getting new ones, and they might go 10, 20 years just doing the same battery over and over again, right? So Sears gave up with that lifetime warranty a long time ago. And of course, Sears itself now pretty much bankrupt. Not much of them left. Now other people are selling those die-hard batteries. But yes, they're junk these days. Realize that the company that makes them, they just go for the cheapest. If they can make the lead thinner, yeah, it's cheaper. We save money on lead. And then, of course, it doesn't last as long. And that's very typical. I see that all the time with those. I would never buy one for my own cars. Nathan Post says, Scotty, I got an '01 Ford Expedition. I replaced the front brake line. Should I get the back brake lines done, or am I just good with the front ones for all-wheel drive? You know, it's 21 years old by car age, because we're already into the 2022 models now. I would say you might as well, just for caution's sake, because see, they corrode on the inside and the outside. They might look okay on the outside, but the inside could be all corroded, and unless you're Superman, I don't think if Superman can see through rubber, they're probably corroding. You might as well change the back ones too. They don't have to think about it for a long time. Brandon St. Clair says, what, if any, additive would be recommended for running today's gas in a vehicle from the 1940s, since they were made for leaded gas? All right, well, they do have additives you can buy that take the place of lead. The lead was a lubricant for those cars, and the valve seats were not hardened that good. So in those days, the lead, when lead is hot, you've seen lead hot, right? And it melts. It's a very good lubricant, even though it's hot. It's a hot lubricant. Well, your engine's hot, so it doesn't care. And that melting lead lubricated the valve seats. Well, they weren't treated to run on the modern valves that don't need any of that, so they can use unleaded gas. So if you got one of those old cars, yeah, you try to buy some additives. But of course, if you're real fanatic about an old car, they make kits to convert them so you get better seats for the valves so that they can run on unleaded gas. And that's what everybody does. Cars, motorcycles, if they're serious about it, they'll convert it so they have harder seats on the valve seals so that things won't wear without the additive of lead. Fawn Ferry says, is the Honda Motocross motorcycle worth the $1,000 premium over Kawasaki? Well, if you're talking motocross, I would say yes. If you're competitive. If you really want to do competitive stuff, go right ahead. If you're just driving around, buy whatever you want. There are all those Japanese motocross bikes are pretty well made. The Honda's a little better in competition if you want to. It all depends on what you want to do, what class you want to join, stuff like that. But yeah, I would get a Honda if I was going to do that. But I just do street bikes, so I don't buy motocross ones. I just have street bikes. Jopey Dopey says, why not buy a proper car lift? Holland says hi. I'm big enough as it is. And if I didn't get up and down working on cars, I'd get even bigger. My grandfather was a mechanic too. He had a gigantic paunch on him. His arms were normal. His legs are normal. You didn't want him to grab you. He could rip you in half. But he had this huge gut. And he worked his whole life in garages that had lifts. My father used to yell at me when I was at the corner Texaco station in Lewiston, New York, when I made that video last year. It's now a coal-fired pizza joint. He'd say, don't work out there in a parking lot. And I said, we're busy inside. It's full. I'll work out here. I don't care. And both of them had humongous guts. If I had a lift, I'd be even bigger. So that's why I don't have a lift. Plus, I don't trust them. They're way up in the air. What if they fall down? I jack them up and put a jack stand. They're not that high, so it's not that problematical. But those big lifts, they're all on there somehow. And if it's not balanced right, I've seen cars fall off of them. And I definitely don't want a car 6 feet up in the air falling down on me either. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.